Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are live on Zoom and on Facebook, and we welcome you to today's program, Tobago Civil Networks. And today we're going to be broadcasting and chatting with you. And we have also a healthy panel group in the studio. My name is Michael Stewart. I've been invited to be the host for today's program. Let me just give you an overview that this is the public and civil society of the Tobago House of Assembly situation, and the way forward is what the discussion focus that we'll be looking at. That is, how do we move forward? As you may know, that we have a six issue deadlock in the Tobago House of Assembly, and there is attempt to break that deadlock by all sides, but we have never been successful thus far. The Tobago Civil Net is a non-partisan group, or in other words, apolitical. They are not affiliated with any political group at all, but really trying to engage the society to be able to discuss matters that would affect them in some significant way. And so we are asking that everybody just leave their political hats on the outside. Everybody individually will have their political suasion, but we are asking that when we are going through the discussion, just think of Tobago first, to think of what would be a fair situation for Tobago. And so as we go into that discussion, we'll ask you to keep that in mind. So we are looking for your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, and your questions. So as we get into it, we will allow the public to ask their questions, and there'll be 30 seconds that we'll ask you to put your thoughts together before you call in or before you signal that you want to share, and use 30 seconds in order to do so. Of course, there's going to be some discussion that's going to be used, but as much as possible, cut down on the preamble if you may, in the interest of time, because we want to be able to operate with a certain timeline here. The panelists will be given about 2 minutes to be able to make their response to your question and to be able to make their presentation. Let me say that those on Facebook can text your questions on Facebook. Those on Zoom, please only raise your virtual hand and we will identify you and ask you to now unmute your microphone and to put on your video so that we can see you, right? So let me just introduce those who are on our panel today in no special order. We have Janae Campbell, is 18 years old, upper sixth form student in Bishop's High School. She possesses a charismatic, diplomatic, passionate temperament. She boasts of many academic achievements, including placing sixth on the island for the SEA examination in 2014, attaining 10 CSEC subjects while placing second nationally for history, amongst other things. Her co-curricular involvement remained active as she was a part of the school's choir, Girl Guides Association as PRO, Student Council as treasurer, and debate team. On a community level, Jenny thrives on a youth advocate and representative at many different levels. She's a vigorous member of the Roxborough Police Youth Club, where she is a part of their dynamic dance group and speech band. Additionally, she is the president of the Youth in Action youth group of the Roxborough Seventh-day Adventist Church, to which she is a committed member. Noteworthily, she has recently been elected and inaugurated as the youth representative for the constituency of Bell Garden East, Roxborough, Delaford in the Tobago Youth Assembly. Moreover, her vehemence and persistence is conspicuous in the Tobago space, as she is also the recently elected president of the Tobago Youth Council. She is the youngest ever to be elected. Though her achievements may be many, she maintains a humble and congenial disposition. She is fervent believer of youth inclusion and involvement in all spheres of life, and she is mobilized to effect positive change in society, one person at a time. So could you just signal so that we'll know the public will, all right,
Hi,
right.
good night. It's an honor being here. Good night, Facebook, and good night, Tobago by extension.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Xavier Edwards, is the current president of Tobago Writers Guild, an NGO dedicated to the development of the literary arts. He serves as the executive host of the Next Chapter, the only open mic platform in Tobago. Xavier is also a recording artist and three-time national awardee for his work in music. Xavier, is Xavier on?
Yeah, good night, everyone, panelists and our viewers online and in the Zoom call. Look forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Andel Roberts, originally from San Fernando, has been a consultant psychiatrist since 2013. He did his undergraduate medical training um, at UE St. Augustine. Is also his postgraduate training at the same institution. He has been a consultant psychiatrist at the Scarborough General Hospital since 2015 and is dedicated to helping those in need. Dr. Roberts.
Hi, good night, everybody. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Wonderful. Tanika Mahahal. That's how I have it. I hope she will forgive me if I pronounce that wrong. Is a self-taught Trinbagonian designer who is also the founder of the first and only luxurious androgynous online store, Issa Vibes Clothing, and androgynous brand Issa Vibe. The steadfast mission of Issa Vibe is to bridge the gap between tradition and culture through fashion when it relates to barriers set by a collection of societal organizations at large, and this has been occurring subliminally through her designs. Could we see you? Could you unmute
Yes.
your mic? Right.
Yes, hi.
Could you just Mahahal?
No, it's three syllables. Mahafal.
Bal. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Then
Yeah.
the spelling that they gave me was wrong because we didn't have a B in it.
All right.
Okay. Pleased to meet you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Kern, thank you. Dr. Kern Johnson has always had a deep passion for voice impersonations and acting, which encouraged him to explore his talents in these areas. After acquiring certificate in communication and presenting and subsequently working with agencies in Tobago and Trinidad and the Caribbean over the last 8 years, he is now enjoying rising popularity as a favorite for event hosting. Dr. Kern pursued education in both agriculture and veterinary medicine and holds joint titles of farmer and veterinarian. He has a sincere passion for helping others and functions as the director of Lighthouse Foundation, which provides food and clothing for the less fortunate. As the vice president of the Tobago Youth Council, Dr. Johnson contributes to the positive development of youth on the island. Dr. Kern Johnson.
Hi, good night, guys. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
All right. So I think we have all except our final one, Dr. Remy, who is no stranger to the forum. And Dr. Remy serves as the independent senator, Trinidad and Tobago Senate since November 2018. She's a pediatrician in private practice, former hospital medical director at the Scarborough General Hospital, executive director of the John Maxwell team of coaches, trainers, and speakers, former president of Trinidad and Tobago Medical Association, member of the Council of Trinidad and Tobago Medical Association, member of the board of directors of Hospital Christian Fellowship, Trinidad and Tobago, chairman of the board of Family Life Tobago, committed servant of the Lord Jesus Christ since 1972. In other words, she is a Christian. Yep. And the mother of one adult son. So these are panelists. Dr. Remy.
Hi, good night, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to a robust discussion tonight.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. So now that we've gotten all of those housekeeping in order, as we said, we are trying to figure out a healing process. Where do we go forward as far as the Tobago House of Assembly is concerned? And it is your personal position and how you feel about it. This deadlock of 6-6, I want you to tell me, you on the panel as the opening question, what's your initial feelings on the 6-6 deadlock? Yeah, so we're going to start there while we ask people to call in or to message in on Facebook and to send us your those who are on the Zoom and want to ask a question, you just put up your hand. But initially, while we wait on those hands to come in, could you just, anybody just answer that question, please?
Michael, I think I'm excited about it. I'm excited because it gives us an opportunity to do something different at a time when we really need to do things differently. I'm saying that because this is the year that Tobago is waiting for the more autonomy that we've been pleading for and asking for and longing for and waiting for the last 40 years in this incarnation of the Tobago House of Assembly. And now that it's near us, I think this 6-6 is a wonderful opportunity to start doing something differently. It's not going to be easy, but my initial, when I saw it happen, I said, wow, this gives us a wonderful opportunity to start differently for 2021.
Have we started differently?
No, we have not.
We
It's
have not.
unfortunate, but I think there's time. I mean, in my understanding, we are young, and when I say as a nation, we are even younger as an island in terms of our doing business this way, and there is no we don't have any examples for it here, so it's going to be hard. But I think if we look at it as an opportunity, and if we see the good things that can come out of it, this is the way I see it, I think it would be different. So far, we have not done well, in my understanding.
Okay. All right. So first time in history, Tobago House of Assembly, we have a hung assembly. Any one of you wish to comment on it?
Hi. So I would just like to say that when we first encountered this impasse, as a young person, I must say I probably saw it as something catastrophic. I know it was something unprecedented, of course. However, I was panicking. And a lot of other persons can attest to this because we didn't know what to expect. Persons were wondering, how are we going to come out of it? And I must admit that during the course of all of this, my perspective on this issue has been changed. I am now seeing it as a blessing in disguise. I see it as an opportunity for us to evolve out of divisive politics, an opportunity for us to unite as one. So put party politics aside and let's rep that Tobagonian flag. So based on the results, we realize that it's not a matter of 6-6 or red versus black, but I'm assuming probably if you mix red and black, you probably might get maroon or burgundy. But for now, we will just say we repping Tobago. And I think that this 6-6 deadlock is a sign that we need to put our individual ideologies, I should say our individual political ideologies aside and think about the betterment of this island holistically. But we must do it together.
Okay, so that's two down with it being a blessing and not necessarily something that we should really be afraid of. Anybody else want to give their opinion? Let me remind those on Facebook, please post your question to the so that we can have them addressed by the panelists. Those on the Zoom, please put up your virtual hand and please follow that instruction in order to do it. Yes, anyone else want to give their opinion on it?
Hi, good night,
Yes.
everyone. Oh, go ahead.
Who are you doubling with?
Go ahead. Whoever was doubling, go ahead.
Hi. Hi, good night. I would say that this 6-6 is something that is meant to happen in a sense where we would all be able to gain some sort of balance. You know, because I could say that based on observations, there has been an extreme increase of persons being particularly interested in the politics. And if you have looked at the dynamics of the politics, I believe that it has shifted based on how it has been in the previous time frame. You know, so this whole 6-6 is for us to gain the balance that is definitely needed in order to successfully attain whatever it is we may be seeking to achieve as a nation. as a body of people, as a society, for the land of Tobago itself. So this 6-6 hasn't been something that I saw as anything negative at all. It is for whomsoever we have there representing us to align themselves in the best way possible to ensure that they also secure the needs of the people and the land in the best way possible. So the 6-6 is for us to gain that whole level of seriousness and be able to function on the whole aspect in a way where it actually creates greater sustainability and substance to everything we seek to acquire, whether in the form of autonomy, in the form of changing over what is faulted. In the act, I'm not saying faulted in a way that I'm particularly pointing out anything, but maybe whatsoever was written was good in that time frame. And now that we are into a whole different time bracket, I believe that certain things can shift to also, keep up with the whole momentum and the paradigm when it comes to everything being aligned at present. So 6-6, in terms of the alignment with the universe, is something that is actually beneficial for us to actually realign, reconstruct, and better be secure for the future we seek to build as a body of people on the land.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's a 6-6 that we are considering fortuitous and a blessing. And I wonder if the protagonists in the 6-6, whether they also see it as a blessing and whether it is really turning out for a blessing. That's a question that we could ask ourselves, whether the same thing that might be taking place in the general population, if you represent the general population, whether that also is in the mind of the those persons who have run for the office. Stacy Herbert, I see your hand up.
You hear me?
Yes, Miss Herbert.
Okay. So I oh yes, I just got a bit by mistake. Yes. So I think I'm very happy that it happened, honestly. I I'm one of those people who like revolution. I like to see something different. You understand? And I'm excited about it. I'm not really apprehensive. Sometimes I get annoyed, but I'm not really apprehensive about it because I know at the end of the day, something has to give. In fact, I'm quite excited by it. And I'm just looking forward to see what happens, without any kind of panic or any kind of fear because I know something has to change. What was happening before just wasn't good enough for me. So we as a people, it gives us an opportunity to, yes, all the quarreling and all the things that are happening now, all of that is necessary. All that is necessary for us to come to a place where somebody had to get humble, everybody had to get humble and get it right. So I'm looking forward to that time, when it happens. I am an optimist and I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So that's Stacy's position on it. So what do you think is the fallout if we don't get this 6-6 manifesting the blessing that we anticipate? What would be the fallout? Anybody?
Good night. Good night, everyone. I think the fallout or part of the fallout that we can experience if we don't see this 6-6 working out is it's a losing an opportunity, an ideal opportunity whereby as an island, both parties could work together. I think we're going to lose that opportunity because I don't think another situation like this would ever present itself again. I think we're going to lose the opportunity to advance our governance, to even create our own governance model if that is necessary. But one that is specific for Tobago, we're going to miss that opportunity. I see this 6-6 as an opportunity for for a lot of learning. And I think within the last 2 months thereabout, probably the largest population of Tobago ever has been reading the Tobago Constitution, the THA Act, and the standing orders of the House. And what that does is that it presents an opportunity for the population to be more educated on governance structures and how the government actually works. But if we don't, if we allow this to pass, then we lose that opportunity of education and what else that education can spawn into for the rest of the population.
Thank you. We have a psychiatrist on board. Is there any psychological, mental fallout, doctor?
Good night. That's a very interesting question. When I think about the possible fallout, I mean, it could tell us two things. One, given the opportunity, and as a blessing, we describe it, the opportunity to try to make it work, and they can't come to, or there's no way to come to a common ground. I don't know what the reason would be, if it's personality or if it's serving their own power, own self-serving things. But it would say a lot about how they view this type of opportunity that we have. And at least for me, it says a lot about their kind of personality and their thinking. With respect to the population, I mean, that would make us now lose faith in them, because we are looking at these people to lead us to try to do something different than what we are used to seeing. We're used to seeing the corruption, or we're used to seeing things not work, and everybody's battling, you know. And given the chance now to come together, I think it might speak of us looking at them in a way where, you know, we can't even trust them to come together to serve us. So who is going to lead us now? So the fallout is going to be, it's pretty big, I think.
Do you think if they return to the polls that the population may be battle weary? Is there a psyche that would say that I'm not going out, or is there a psyche that would say we want to make sure that something has happened? Could you predict what somebody may do if there is a return to the poll? What the population may do?
As for me?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, I don't think I can predict the future. Far from it.
But I'm talking about from the way how people process thought and how people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I believe the turnout wasn't as good as they expected it to be. And if there's this impasse and, you know, this trying to come to a common ground and it's not happening, then I think people will now be forced to come out and vote. So I do think that people would tend to say, well, you know, we need this to be settled, we need this to move forward, and, you know, come out and vote the second time around. I believe that's what will happen.
Okay, thank you. Any other panelists want to weigh in on the discussion so far?
I would agree with Dr. Andel in saying that it may push people to come forward. There are some people who would not have voted for whatever reasons, who are saying, now that this is here, I will go out and vote, if we have to go back to vote now. But there, I can also see them, some people saying, I am fed up of this. If I have to go back to vote now and then have to go back to vote again whenever that Tobago House of Assembly internal self-government bill is passed, I can see some people saying, listen, this is too much for me. But I do think that if this is what I think, if we go back with 12 seats, not with 15, if we go back with 12 seats, then I can see people going out. And I think there's a way to go back with 12 seats. And that is, there has to be an agreement with the same 12 who cannot agree right now as to going forward. But they can come together so that they can get the Assembly legislature going to say, okay, ask the president, let's 12 of us ask the president to go back to the polls with the current 12 seats. If that happens, then I could see people probably saying, listen, let's go out and give this a try again. With the 15 seats, I think is a different story.
Okay. All right, let's just take some on Facebook. Let's take the someone on Facebook is saying it is a golden opportunity for working together, but the reality is that both parties are not arriving at an agreement. How do we even get to the point of having an independent mediator? That's the question that posed on Facebook. How are we now going to deal with this as a mediator? Let's give one of the persons we haven't heard from so far on the panel.
Well, good night, everyone. I think that would only be me at this point. And I'm pleased that that's the first question that comes to me. You mentioned their inability to get along, to find some middle ground. And I like to take the example of a play park when we're children. And the PDP are our friends, the PNM are our friends, and they're fighting. Now, when you watch friends fight, sometimes you might leave them to battle it out to a point. But when people start to pick up weapons and hit each other, bust head and big stone pelting, then it would be irresponsible of the friends who call themselves friends. And in this way, it will be Tobagonians to remain silent while they continue to damage each other and the society to that extent. So how do they make it work? By these kinds of forums, by the civil society. And civil society is a term that isn't very much present in the minds of Tobagonians to a major degree, because it's such a political environment that didn't have an active civil society for a while. Civil society is basically everybody who is just a Tobagonian, the business people, the man on the ground, the man who has his business place, the entrepreneurs, the designers, the Tobago Youth Council president, Kern the vet, every single person. So when they can't come to an agreement for themselves, it is up to us to make it happen. And the dominant ideologies coming out right now on mainstream media, on the television, is being controlled by these two elements who are fighting against each other. But there's a third element that exists, and that is civil society. That is the public. We are the people, and really and truly, I'm so happy now because I'm seeing a shift in people's willingness to speak out about how they feel. It could be a side effect of the amount of pressure and tension that they're under outside of the political landscape. COVID, to deal with children at home, never had to deal with that kind of homeschooling situation, the violence against women. The pressure is high. The pressure is high and the people are speaking out, and it would be, one, a shame for those not to listen to the voices of the public. And the truth is, regardless to when an election is going to happen, in between that time, their inability to work together is damaging the society and damaging them. They may not realize it in the midst of the fight, in the heat of the moment, but they are bleeding slowly. And Tobago is bleeding slowly as well. So we, all of us here, have to apply the pressure to encourage that kind of collaboration and look for collective healing in our space whenever the election is, because there will be a time frame in between that and now. And if the fighting continues, I think people are at the point where it's just too much. It's too much.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Tanika, I want to bring you in on this one here. The last person who asked the question talk about how are we even going to arrive at an independent mediator. Do you think a mediator is necessary in this deadlock? And if you do think so, it has been touted in the news that one party is saying that there may not be an independent mediator that might be available. Or reputed, it is said that somebody would have said so from one side. Is a mediator required, do you think?
I would think that having a mediator would be an ideal direction to use in order to settle this whole tug of war, that activity that is occurring right now. Mainly being is that there are two passionate groups of people, persons on the PNM side, the persons with the PDP, all representatives are passionate and are seeking to exercise what exactly they seek to pursue out here for Tobago. So in order to find that common ground, in order to have that balance, we need like a third party who would actually be there to maintain that whole balance and to maintain the control and structure. Because I believe that we have been seeing that there hasn't been much movement. We have been a bit stagnant without a mediator. So actually trying something, which is this is a possible solution. So when solutions like this arise, we will not even know unless we actually take the risk and see where it goes from there. So it's not like we just sit back and just remain in that stagnant level, because it will continue to probably demotivate the whole agenda of everything else here. So having a mediator presence is something that can actually be a possible solution towards settling and moving forward and ahead in a better steer direction towards attaining all that we seek to fulfill in the form of purpose as representatives, as whomsoever we aspire to be there to support the people and the land of Tobago, which is the main focus at hand. So it's not just about who's representing PNM, who's representing PDP, or just having a mediator. It is the affairs of Tobago, and it is something that we should focus on seriously. We're not going to wait all that time.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Jenny, I'm going to be coming to you and ask you whether you see in Tobago that we have enough people who could be dispassionate enough to be credible mediators to a situation such as this. I'm going to come to you, but let me just speak to those who are just tuning in on Facebook and probably on the Zoom, that we are talking with the public and the civil society on the Tobago House of Assembly situation and the way forward. The Tobago Civil Net is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society organizations and concerned citizens, all combining forces for the purpose of having collective input on Tobago's development. That's the main purpose of Civil Networks Tobago, to make sure that we can be able to have a voice in our own destination and in our own development. Jenny.
It's interesting. I love that question. In my opinion, I would say that everybody has some political bias, right? Each of us have our own unique political persuasion. Whether you choose to abstain from the politics and remain apolitical, whether you're operating from a non-partisan level, we all will have our views on the current state of affairs. So I would say what we need is somebody that is able to be objective and be able to put their personal or their political beliefs aside. I know a few persons that can do that. However, I could understand to a little extent why one party might say that they probably might not want the mediator because they might feel disadvantaged. Because, as I said before, everybody has a political bias. However, I think the idea of the mediator is a good one, and I think it would be a beneficial one, especially when it comes to diplomacy and order, because I can tell you I lost faith in those two main political parties. It seems as if they cannot get it done on their own, and I personally think that they need somebody else that is objective and somebody who is able to see the bigger picture and would be able to guide them accordingly. However, in the Tobago space, I can't say I know a few persons, but then the question is then asked, how are we going to go about selecting that mediator, and what criteria we are going to use to assess them? Is it going to be based on our personal persuasion of that person? Do we know that these persons are always and you can trust them to be objective? So these are questions that I think need to be raised. But as it relates to having a mediator, I personally think it's a step in the right direction. I just think we need to be meticulous in who we select. But I can assure you there would be persons out there.
You said that one side may think that they will have a disadvantage, and then I'll go to Xavier because I see Xavier's hand is up. But you said that there's going to be a disadvantage that some may perceive. Could you elaborate on that some more? And then we'll go to Xavier and then Dr. Remy.
Right. So I was basically saying that one side, like I said before, would think that the mediator might not necessarily be in the middle. In the Tobago space, most times they either PNM or against, or they're probably abstaining, right? And one side might tend to think, because don't forget, we are understanding perspectives here. We are not saying that anyone is right or wrong, but if we are analyzing the different perspectives, I can see that one side might probably think that the mediator themselves might have a bias and might affect the proceedings. So that is what I meant when I said that one side might see a disadvantage. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Xavier and then Dr. Remy.
Yeah, just have a few comments I'd like to raise based on some of the things Jenny said. I also agree with Jenny that mediation is a step in the right direction. I would add to that I wasn't here for it, but from what I've heard, the presiding officer, the post of presiding officer, is sort of that role. And prior to a couple decades ago, the presiding officer at least had the optics of being someone who is unbiased. No, this isn't dealing with the reality of, as Janae mentioned, people's political bias that is internal, but the optics of the presiding officer, traditionally in Tobago, as far as I've been told, in the past, before a few decades ago, would be someone who is unbiased, right? Second comment, the discussion that was had between the both parties that the Prime Minister chaired, he in a sense acted as a mediator. The Prime Minister in a sense acted as a mediator in that process, thereby showing me that mediation is something that for either party to be resistant to right now is demonstrating that a lack of acknowledgement for the equality that has been mandated for them to act in that framework based on the way the people voted. And those are my two comments on what
Thank you
Jamie
very much, Xavier. Thank you very much. Dr. Remy?
Yes, Mr. Stewart, there is the view that, at least I saw somewhere where someone said that if you bring mediators in, it would seem as though you can't handle your business. And I don't necessarily think that that is so. Handling your business is difficult. We're accepting that. And mediation would try to help you to get it, to get an outcome out of it. And it's not necessarily that you're weak or not necessarily that you can't do things well. But in this process where, as I said again, it's the first time this is happening, we have in our jurisdiction, we don't have that history of this kind of mediation. Well, we've had political parties coming together and agreeing on, like when you had the NER, when you had the People's Partnership, you had people coming together for a purpose, but now coming together to work out a solution that is national. We have not had that before. So I don't think it's that you're going to be seen as weak if you cannot do it, or if it's difficult to do. So I think that view, I don't agree with that view. That's one. And the other thing is that if you look over the world, there are lots of people who do it. Lots of governments, they have mediators going all over the world, mediating very serious issues. And I don't think that we should look at it as a weakness. And the other view is that, yes, you will not necessarily have people that you all agree on, but at least it doesn't have to be one person. It doesn't have to be a mediator. It could be a mediator, a team of persons. And you will have an opportunity to say, okay, yes, we are off the lot that you put here. And you'll have an opportunity to put your people who you think you have confidence in. And I'm sure they'll be able to find a team that can work with the group.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other on the panel that would want to respond or to give their way in on it?
I just have a quick comment.
Okay.
I am aware that a proposal was sent to both parties on the 15th of March from Tobago CivilNet, proposing 3 core things: a facilitation council to help them maneuver through the process of the power sharing arrangement, a mediation council to deal with any issues that arise in between that period, and thirdly, expediency in the passing of the Tobago Autonomy Bill. And just to state that mediation and facilitation angle, it didn't come out of any political party. That made it to the news first, because as I mentioned earlier, the news is being taken over by those mainstream ideas. But that came out of a CivilNet conversation just like this, where people were calling in, and it came out of the civil society, out of the public, that was a good direction to head. The term they used at the time, that conversation was held on the 1st of February. The term they used was a elders council. CivilNet evolved that to not exclude the youngsters, exclude the business community, exclude the creative community, and that's why we call it a facilitation council, to be more inclusive. But I am aware that that document came out before even the PDP went to mainstream mediums to blow it up in that way. And I don't know if it's because of the adversarial nature it's being rejected, but that did not come out of a party, that came out of the people. So I just
have you all received a feedback on it?
The PDP has acknowledged receipt of it. We haven't received a word from the PNM as yet.
Okay, and there's no indication whether it is going to be considered. It's just acknowledgement so far.
Yeah, but well, it's definitely being considered, because it was subsequent to the proposal being sent that it made it to mainstream media. So I know it's being considered. It's just time, I guess. I'm still faithful that they'll figure it out, because there's a limit to these things.
I want to find out whether there is anything we the people can do to force the hand of the two factions, right? But Tanika, I think I saw your hand up at first when Xavier was coming in. You had something you wanted to share? Okay, all right. Doc, your hand is still up. Is that a new question or a new input that you want? Your microphone is muted.
No, I was thinking that there was a question on the chat.
Yes. Somebody saying it's disappointing though that our leaders need mediation. Well, even a physician needs a physician. What would it take to convince each of the two parties that mediation is in their interest? Okay, I think that was the direction I was going with the question to. How could the voters get a seat at the mediation table? I think we need to hear them, especially those who voted for change. All right, so let's take the others will comment, I think it is. Let me just read this other comment while I'm at it. But the question that I want you to consider is the question from this caller. How could the voters get a seat at the mediation table? Right, so this other person says, Facebook, if all leaders in the island cannot portray the right behavior and leadership qualities necessary. No, I think we did that one already. Yes, okay. All right, how can the voters get a seat at the mediation table? Any ideas?
Yeah, I could speak a bit to how the voters can get involved. So the proposal that was sent via CivilNet was endorsed by many organizations, including the Tobago chapter of Chamber of Commerce, the Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute, Tobago Writers Guild, the Youth Votes Matter, Tobago Literary Society, a couple of organizations. Essentially, all the NGOs and organizations who are part of CivilNet actively or inactively, they had the opportunity to suggest members of society for consideration for the council. So, as Johnny mentioned, you see, like how Johnny said, I know a few people who might be able to do it. They could submit the names and we go through a process. And I say we because it's inclusive. The parties will have to be part of that process, civil society and the two parties, and come up with names that they're comfortable with to cover a broad section of society, faith-based institutions, the business community, the creative sector, the youth votes or the youth voices. And that's how civil society could get involved. And I think it would be quite unfair to leave the general public and civil society out of any mediation forum, practically.
All right, so the other question that is on it, and then you could also, the panelists could also continue on this question, but I'm seeing a question is, what would it take to convince each of the two parties that mediation is in their interest? Because you all have said that yes, mediation is it. What would it take to convince them?
Michael, and good night again, everyone. I think
Yes.
one of the things that that can be done is if the population could show to the leaders how this lack of agreement or the ability to agree is negatively affecting the population. It shows them that, hey, listen, you all can't get together, and this is the impact it is having on me. As Xavier said before, all of this is coming on the heels of all the stresses that we have had before. Violence with women, COVID-19, we locked down inside. For some people, there's no carnival, they can't travel. And now you have this 6-6 impasse, and this seems to be the straw that breaks the camel back. And so I think what it means for us is that we as persons who are affected should come forward and let the people know this is how we feel about it. I think also for both parties, there seems to be an urgency for power. I don't know. I think if both parties would, as everyone has been saying, make it about Tobago, but I don't know if they know how to separate making it about Tobago while at the same time not making it about power. And I think the inability of both sides to release or to not want to hold on to the powers is what is having us in this situation at this time.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
Hi, my hand was raised, but
Jenny, yes.
yeah, I will come to that question, but the hand was raised concerning the previous question, which was asking about how us as civil society, how us as the voting population can become involved in the mediation and the consultation and whatnot. And this is a very touchy issue for me in particular, but I know there are many means, and especially if we seek to do it virtually, there are many easy ways that persons can go online and lay their recommendations and suggestions on something as simple as Google Docs, right? Sometimes you might have to have that face-to-face consultation meeting with persons and you invite it done public. But I would like to get to another point, and I know somebody probably might be upset with me for saying this, but I personally find that we as Tobagonians are to some extent very docile. I think that sometimes we as Tobagonians probably only have mouth, I should say, if I'm using the vernacular. We only have mouth for certain things, but when it's time for actual action, when it's time to actually let your voices be heard in a diplomatic way and a way that would actually reap fruit, sometimes we as Tobagonians don't present ourselves. Because I could draw a reference to that consultation that Fazir Mohammed had up Signal Hill, and I know of a few young persons my age who went because they were anxious. they were really anticipating that opportunity to get their voices heard, and they thought that they would go up there and see a crowd of Tobagonians ready to ask their questions to persons from the political parties, and they were utterly disappointed by the turnout with us as Tobagonians. So I think the problem is not necessarily the opportunity, because I realize in this Tobago context, sometimes the opportunity is always there, sometimes the opportunity always presents itself. But the question you might have to ask is, where is the willingness for us as a people to actually come out and have our voices be heard? Because to be told, many of us just have the mouth. We only have we could only air our opinions on social media, or probably on a Liz Williams comment. But when it's time to actually get it done in a diplomatic way, actually come out of your comfort zone and get things done and let your voices be heard, we don't present ourselves generally. So I think the question shouldn't so always be about what can be done, or what can those in power do. But the question should be asked, what can we do as Tobagonians? Let us rally our troops. Let us become mobilized, and let us demand things. We don't have to wait until some organization comes and does it. We as Tobagonians, the population is so small, and practically everybody know everybody to some extent. Come on, we as Tobagonians need to have that willpower. And I just wanted to put that in there.
You as a young person, do you think enough young people are actively involved in the whole process of governance and politics and pushing their ideas so that it would bring a measure of force upon the leaders? Do you think so? Or do you think they are part of that laissez-faire? What was the word you used?
I think I used docile.
Docile, yes. Yes. Do you think that they are docile, or do you think that they are active?
To be honest, when persons ask me questions like this, I cringe because I don't want to say anything, especially when I'm not speaking from a point of like evidence and research per se. But as someone on the ground, generally, young people are not too interested in politics. That's the raw truth. However, I see a trend where a lot of young persons are aspiring to become politicians, or even if they're not aspiring to be politicians, they have an interest in the politics, because it's so interesting. I'm just 18 years old, and I have a lot of persons within that age bracket. And even doing this impasse, I see a lot of persons airing their concerns, and I'm speaking about people my age. I'm speaking about people who are maybe not even aligned to any organizations, or probably not aligned to any political party, but they as young people are willing and they are ready to let their voices be heard. However, I would say that the majority of young people are not interested. And to be quite frank, I don't blame them, because I am of the firm belief that the elders don't set a positive example for us to really be interested. To actually be interested in politics, I mean, you have to love politics, or it's so conspicuous, like it's directly in front of your face, it's directly affecting you, so you have to have a say, you have to become involved in it. Otherwise, we could care less, because a lot of persons would also argue that they don't feel as if politicians or governments or even organizations, both public sector, private sector, have young people's interests at heart. There is a constant plight across the board, and as a young person seeing what is taking place, I could understand that perspective whereby persons say, well, they don't care about we young, so what is the sense fight up with that? What politicians giving we? What politics have for me? And I could tell you also, as a young person, sometimes it's difficult to get into that political arena, because a lot of older persons shut you down, especially when you have a view that is opposed to their view. Persons come at you and probably tell you, well, you're young, um, you don't understand. You now come out, you now born. So you and know what take place. I live the life and I know. So sometimes when you might come with your innovative ideas, and when you come with your personal political persuasion based on your unique experiences. There are persons that will literally shut you down. And as a young person, who would really want that stress? Like I said, you have to really love it to be in it. And that's the raw truth.
Thank you very much. Well, I hope that we hear some feedback from other young people to see whether what you said resonate with them. So let me just go to the people on Facebook. But those who have just joined us, what we are doing today is discussing from a non-partisan standpoint the situation of the Tobago Assembly and the 6-6 deadlock. But it is really to progress this into the way forward, and we're using it for a developmental process so that we could help Tobago in its quest to make sure that we can be able to operate with proper governance on the island. So if you are on Facebook, please post your questions. And if you're on the Zoom, please, and the people in the audience, you may put up your hand to ask a question. The audience on the Zoom, put up your virtual hand to ask a question. All right, so on the Facebook, it is said, what would it take to convince each of the two parties that, let's have CARICOM representatives mediate using an audio-visual platform where the persons involved can be controlled effectively, ensure it is done live. So that's one of the suggestions coming forward. So we'll ask you to consider that. So Xavier, you look like you want to take that. Whether we're going to have, just give me a quick response on that.
My answer short. I agree with the Prime Minister. This is a Tobago issue that we deal with it in Tobago.
All right.
That's my answer.
The others on the panel also agree with that?
I don't think whatever mediation should happen, it should happen live. It should be behind closed doors. I think people should have an opportunity to have this stay, and it should be behind closed doors. I don't mind if they don't think that Tobagonians are able to do it, because they have to agree. If they don't think that they have a group in Tobago sufficiently able to mediate, I have no problem with CARICOM. But
Okay.
it should not be a live event until they have their solution. When they come live with their what they have done, the results of the meeting.
Silent majority, the 48% that did not vote, need to express how it's affecting them. Does the panel believe the mainstream media is fueling this stalemate? Do you all think it's the media creating or keeping this stalemate active and alive? Cohen, Dr. Johnson?
I think, I mean, the media has its part to play, but I think when you allow, like when you have the meeting, for example, because there is no independent or there's no independent view coming out of the meeting, whatever the leader for the PDP says, PDP followers are going to listen to. Or whatever the leader of the PNM says, PNM followers are going to listen to. And so there's no way to authenticate what really happened inside the meeting. And that confusion just spurs it onward. And then when you look at the backlash on social media, once that political leader says that, then all the other people will be commenting. It could be erroneous, but they weren't there to be able to authenticate the statements, but they are just running with whatever the leader has said. And so I think the media is only portraying what is coming out there. But as we said, if there is no independent voice coming out of the meeting to say, well, this was said and this is the truth, then it leaves room for a lot of confusion.
Okay, thank you. Another question, is the president showing enough interest to this matter? Dr. Remy, you've been in the house? Both houses? Do you think the president is showing enough interest? Is the question?
I think the president made her statement very clear when she, at the swearing in of the assemblymen. She was very clear. She told them to go and try to work things out and do creative things. We should look at his statement again to them. I don't know that the president, I don't know that she has any formal role, probably an informal role in the sense of, in other words, probably calling them together, but I don't know. I don't know. I really cannot say whether, I doubt, I would not take silence though as not being interested in what is happening, but probably whether she thinks she has a role, a formal role or not, I don't know. Yes, but I mean, her statement to them was very, 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 very poignant. And I think we need to look back at that. And they probably also need to look back at that in terms of the advice that she gave them then.
Okay, thank you. We have, this one is for Dr. Andel. Due to all that we have sustained over the past year with the spewing of so many defensive opinions, are we stuck in debate mode? Are we stuck in debate mode where everything is debated and not agreed on?
So it is often said that in any organization, your greatest asset is the personnel, and the greatest challenge is those same personnel. And when it comes to life and living, we're dealing with people who have personalities, people who have histories, people who have beliefs, people who have biases. And so the challenge of coming together is a great one because people simply have very different views of seeing things. And when it comes to governance of a country, the whole idea of democracy is to come together and we decide what happens. But then if we have different opinions, how do we decide which way we go? And so that's where the debate starts. Now, there are other things about humanity that affects this. For example, generally speaking, people don't like to be wrong. It's innate from the time we're young. Children don't like to be young. They don't like to get in trouble. They always want to win. This is something that is ingrained in us. So when there's an issue and we have to decide, well, are you going to take control or are you going to take control? The default is, no, I know better because I think the way I see it, it will work better my way or it will work better our way. And if both sides do that, then you're just stuck at an impasse. And the idea of maturity now comes in where you can take a step back and we can work things out. And I think Clint said this, can they separate power from what it means to take a step back and put Tobago first? And if they're not able to do that, we will be inevitably stuck in debate mode. They will just go back and forth until the maturity can show where individuals can step back, parties can step back, power can step back from me and my side to forward Tobago. That is a very difficult thing to achieve because people in general are not like that.
I was reading coming out of the US elections that there's suggestion that they should have psychiatric evaluation of candidates running for office. Do you think that is something that is recommended from your expert view as a psychiatrist, that we should have them psychiatrically evaluated?
Oh, that's a loaded question. You ever heard the term how more mad people outside and inside? It's a term that people often use. But the backdrop of that as a psychiatrist is it's very difficult to define what normal is. So the whole idea of doing an evaluation for people who were to run for office is to say, okay, this person fits it in what we consider might be normal function or normal evaluations or normal whatever. And then you can say, okay, this person could be trusted to make rational decisions. But then who decides what normal is? Society actually decides what normal is. And there are a range of ways you can decide that. If it's a utopian view, if it's a physical view, it's a mental health view, if it's very, very broad. And so in mental health or psychiatry, what we do is we can say there's a very wide range of what normal is, and people who are the fringes, we can say, okay, this is obviously not normal. So we would have to help them with that. But assessing people are, so, as I said before, people are so different. Their experiences are so different. It's almost unfair to tell somebody that their view of something is wrong or not normal simply because it's different. Because you will always have people in society who would support your view. It may not be the vast majority, but people might support your view. So it's very difficult for me to say that that would be something that would be a necessary thing, or I would advise that, because even if you were to do that kind of evaluation, it still wouldn't filter out the issue that would come up where people have different opinions, and you still have to be mature enough to step back and work it out.
Okay, thank you. So, somebody
Michael,
mentioned, yes, sir. Yes, Doctor.
I just wanted to comment on one thing that Dr. Robert said. He mentioned something about trust, and I think that is another part of the reason that is so difficult for the two to come together, because neither side could trust the other, because they feel that either side would go back on the decision that they have made, and so they feel that if they trust the other side, or if they submit to a position of weakness, that the other side would take control and do away with them. And it's unfortunate that we have come to a position in our evolution, political evolution, that we hardly find people to be representatives who we could trust, and we just resort to accepting the lesser evil. It's unfortunate that we have come to this point, and I think trust is a big part of the reason why we can't move forward at this point.
A question from the Facebook. The president has assented to the Tobago Autonomy Bill. How will that affect the power sharing process? Who are going to have that? Dr. Remy, you want to try that?
The fact that the bill has been assented to doesn't mean that it comes into action. That only happens when it's proclaimed. And the proclamation will only come when the government says, if the government says to the president to proclaim the bill. In other words, a bill can be there and assented to and not proclaimed. It only comes into action when it's proclaimed in that case, because there's a clause in it says it comes into action when proclaimed by the president. So it has gone a bit further than it was before, but we still do not know what is going to happen. If it's proclaimed, then it means that we'll be going with the 15 and all of that, and going back to the polls with that, in that case. Now,
is there a statutory deadline if it is assented to between that and being proclaimed?
No, there's no deadline. They have bills that have been there for years before proclamation, because before you proclaim it, you have to be ready for it to be in action. In other words, a bill may be passed, but you have to put things in place in the government before it could go live then. And They would wait until those things are done before they say, okay, we are ready for this to go live. It can be proclaimed now. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen and when. But in the meantime, we have, I think, things even before that to happen in Tobago. We don't know if that is going to happen, but what we know that has to happen is that a budget has to be passed. By June, a budget has to be debated by June according to the act. So, I mean, to me, that should be pushing people forward to do something. And you have to send something to the government so that it can be considered in the budget debate come September. So that to me is something that's urgent, and it should be pushing people to do something quickly.
And that comes back to the first question that we had asked. What is the fallout if we are stuck in that 6-6? And so now what you are suggesting, that that's a major fallout?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because by the end of September, what has been allocated for running Tobago ends. And if the debate does not happen, I'm not too sure what will happen thereafter.
Okay, all right. So, you know, we talk about the autonomy bill, and we know that the autonomy bill, from my understanding, is that this is not the entire document that gives Tobago full autonomy, because this is a stopgap in order to move the Tobago House of Assembly forward. But the document that they wanted to cause Tobago to have that power requires the support of the opposition. Am I right, Dr. Remy?
Yes, it does, because it requires a change in the Constitution, several parts in the Constitution to be changed.
How just as we're talking about, how could we convince the parties to come together and do something? Is there some way to lobby the opposition to ensure that they give the support in the interest of Tobago's full autonomy, to come on board for that? Is there something that could be done in that area?
Well, I think this is what I understand as one of the big gains. If the 12 assemblymen that have been elected understand that this is a key role that they will have to play in going forward, if they seriously want to see the Tobago Autonomy Bill, that internal self-government bill, passed in whatever form, with modifications, with whatever changes that they may have to have. But they are key as a group together to see that bill come to fruition. That is the lobbying will not happen with the 6 PNM people going and lobbying the UNC. The lobbying would not happen with the PDP coming to lobby the PNM to see the bill pass. But I think if both groups understand that if the 12 assemblymen say to the government, both to the government and the opposition, this is something that we want in Tobago, it is more likely that that will happen than what is happening right now.
Anyone of the panelists want to weigh in on that? I guess not.
Yeah.
All right. Yes.
Yeah, I would say something.
Go ahead, Tanika.
Yes, I would say that with both parties actually coming together, it will be better. It will be a better ability for us to actually have that strength rather than it being one-sided, with one party specifically going down there to seek to gain whatever it is that they seek to gain. You know, we are better when we work together, because at the end of the day, one hand could never clap. You know, and this circumstance is where we would understand that one hand cannot clap in order for us to actually secure that autonomy and for us to actually change whatever that needs to be changed in the act and stuff like that. So if there are some sort of ability for them to actually be mature, regardless of whichever personal growth one may seem to achieve, it will be really good to just, you know, come together. Aside from just having the debates, you know, you can just come to a common ground and solution and agreement where you seek to understand the difference in perspective. Yes, there will be difference in personal nature. You know, we have a versatile thought process where each person will come together sharing their own passions, you know, but they need to also separate the personal achievements that one might want to achieve for self. You know, so a representative might want to become a representative in their own natural way to carry out whatever duties they seek to achieve. You know, but it cannot be that way in this point. At this point in time, you know, we need to come together, and that is where we'll be better strong. It also shows greater credibility of it not being a form of political arrangement where it's just opposition and leading governance. You know, it's not like cat and dog and whatnot. So if we can actually group together and have that cooperation, it would make perfect sense and show better credibility as the representing and changing the whole dynamics of the political paradigm. You know, so you're not seeing minority and those upper. You know, it's not a separation of class or separation of identity or anything of that sort. It will just be one wholeness seeking to actually gain what we align ourselves to be for the people and land to do. So that togetherness is where our strength will come in, and as well as our competence towards actually leading and changing things that needs to be changed in this time and frame we live in right now. So we need togetherness more so than just individual identity and stuff like that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For those who are now tuning in, we are talking with the public and civil society on the Tobago Assembly situation and the way forward. Tobago Civil Net is a non-partisan group of Tobago civil society organizations and concerned citizens, all combining forces for the purpose of having collective input on Tobago's development. And so if you wish to contact the Tobago Civil Net, you may email them at tobagocivilnet@gmail.com or call 487-9722. We have 15 minutes before we come to the end of the program. Let's take Mr. Charles Smith on Zoom. And those on Zoom, you may just raise your hand, even though you're not on the panel. You may raise your hand and ask any question at this time. And those on Facebook, please send in your questions. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, everyone. I've lived in Trinidad and Tobago for almost 40 years, and it's everything but a utopia. I want to comment on the fact that we are thinking that if we can only get these 12 assemblymen to work together, that it would somehow impact upon the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago and get them to pass the autonomy bill. But somehow I believe that that is a utopic idea. I have seen governance in Trinidad and Tobago, and not because Tobago simply wants something or we are united on a particular ideal means that it's going to move the hands of the parliamentarians. I'm not certain about that. I'm not certain about the fact that simply getting the 12 assemblymen to work together, where partisan or not, PDP or PNM, would get the UNC to support the bill in a rational way, because I have seen a lot of irrational activity, even in our parliament. So just proposing that getting the 6 to work together would automatically give us autonomy in Tobago, I think that that idea is slightly deficient. Moving on from that, I want to suggest that unless we are willing to, and I would have heard one of the panelists suggest that we are a bit docile, unless we are willing to get on the cargo boat and drive our trucks and cars and block Ryson Road and shut down the entire country so that we would be able to achieve autonomy, until we get to that mindset to want to do everything possible so that we can get autonomy for ourselves, I'm not so certain that autonomy would simply be handed to us on a silver platter. I thank you for the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Appreciate it. All right. I see a Heather with a hand up. Please unmute your microphone. And if you wish, you may turn on your video if you so desire. If not, it's not compulsory. Heather, Heather on Zoom, and then Kevon McKenna. Okay, if Heather is not, then Kevon, could you go ahead if you are ready?
Sure. I think I would just more give a comment. I'm hearing persons saying that, you know, and I know the Civil Net put forward a proposal for in terms of the power sharing. I would put on record that I totally disagree with the power sharing, given the type of politics that we practice. And also you are telling two parties whom have built their resumes to be opposite, to be deliberately opposite of each other. For example, I'm hearing persons saying, well, you know, if you have a PNM secretary of a division, you should have an assistant secretary. And I don't think people understand that the assistant secretary still has no power within that division, because anything that assistant secretary has to do has to be signed off by the secretary. And even under the current structure where you look at the PNM, an assistant secretary really doesn't really do much. Is when the secretary probably cannot make a meeting, they will then say, well, you could go and attend this function for me. But outside of that, I put you in as my assistant secretary and I don't use you. And there's nothing that you could do. And I'm saying to the person that we're not looking at the implementation is where the problems are going to come up under these 6 months. Added to which, we are going to end up, if you do a power sharing, you're going to end up with a lot of secret meetings. You're going to have the meeting to try to show to everybody that I'm being all inclusive. So I'm meeting with all my managers. But what is going to happen after that? Let's not kid ourselves. We are going to have secret meetings or a cabal meeting, really and truly, to implement a process or to implement something. And you're going to have everybody on both sides trying to one up the other one, because we know within 6 months we are going back to the polls. So that's why for me personally, I would say I do agree with power sharing. However, I mean, it is something to consider, but for me, I like to look at the implementation of that power sharing, and that is what we're not going to see, and that's where the problem is going to come. And I think that's what we're also seeing now with the PNM saying, listen, if I give the PDP the majority here, they could then call on a motion of no confidence, remove our chief sec, remove the presiding officer, and then probably stay in office for 4 years. And that's where now we have the breakdown, the possible breakdown of the talks.
Thank you. So
Can I just say something to that, Mr. Stewart?
yes, Doc.
This, Mr. McKenna said that the part that concerns the majority that the PDP said that they won't. In other words, they will have 3 of the 4 councillors. That is something that they put in a mediation. You don't accept necessarily what the person's put on the table. You bring your position. Is there something that says we are not going to accept that, but we split the councillors in 2-2, and you have an equal number? So you cannot have an issue where you have that there is any majority and anybody could vote out or have a no confidence motion. And nobody's saying that this thing is going to be easy, but could they see it? And is the power sharing part of it may be the beginning of a future, because there are governments, there are situations where you have non-partisan governments. In other words, like you have people who are selected not because of a party, but because it is one of the, I think, options that they had considered for Tobago because it is so small. But anyway, what we are dealing with right now is the partisan one. And what I am suggesting is that it is not going to be easy, but to me, we can give it a try at the beginning. It's not going to be forever, but you may decide that you may find something that is so good in terms of going forward, because otherwise it means that we continue with this half of the 60,000 of us, half of us being excluded and another half being in power at one time, and vice versa. And you never get the whole of you never get all of your talents and giftings able to help the running of the economy. I'm sure if we really sit down and work it out, we will see that it will take us much further than what we have right now. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make any comment on it?
Yes, I would like to also add with what Dr. Remy said as well. I think that if we can actually utilize the solutions at hand rather than staying fixated on what we would have practiced in past time frame, we can actually grow together as a community, not just community, as a country and as a nation itself. So this, not six only, but actually having 12 persons working together can actually change the whole dynamic of it being a competitive force field where we combat against each other. This is a time where we can actually use this form of situation to come together as one and be mature with the whole political gameplay here. It's not about just PNM, it's not just about PDP, it's not just about position, it's like beyond that. So this whole shift that is occurring now, it is important for us to actually revise, to reanalyze and restructure our form of thinking and our visions and our ideals. We need to actually have a greater mission and purpose. And this purpose right now is to actually secure and be harmonious, to actually eliminate the whole combative force that is there to, put us separate us. Politics itself is already a separating agenda and aspect. So now that we have this 6-6 occurring where 12 persons being different in color and ideals, we need to also find a common ground, which is to cater to the needs of Tobago people and to the land itself. We do not need to stay on the mediocre level of just thinking, all right, well, I'm PNM, I'm PDP, and this and that. No, it is bigger than that. We need to emancipate our mindsets. We need to restructure all that and form this coalition that is going to actually create growth rather than stagnant. So if we can actually move ahead from this whole fixated practice that has been the cultural dynamic for so however long, this is a time that it is important. Something I always say is that timing is either it versus you, it's either versus the universe, or it is either versus society. And this is what is happening right now. Timing. This is the time for us to actually revise, reanalyze, and reconstruct so that you can have better growth and security for a sustainable environment and country, for people and the land. It's not just as mediocre as thinking, all right, if this happens there, this happens that, if UNC feels that, we have strength together as one. And I believe that we can do that, actually accomplish it, and also set this whole standard of having better politics and stuff like that. Don't let it
I
be
think,
as
Tanika,
what
I
it
think,
always
Tanika,
as.
I think you're having some internet challenges, Tanika. Yeah? All right. So I think somebody on Facebook said maybe we need to change the name from power sharing to collaborative governance. I don't think psychologically people like to share power. Yeah, so that's a suggestion. Also, keep an eye on the time. Maybe we need to change an eye on the time. It says 12 assemblymen should return to their constituencies, not to the polls. Organize discussion sessions and enable their constituents to debate, discuss, and decide on a resolution for the 6-6 for the overall direction of the island. That way, the assemblymen can prove and demonstrate their democratic credibility and legitimacy. The people can be empowered and new ways of doing things can be established. Okay. Should the party leaders refrain from public adversarial utterances and campaigning and speak through a facilitation council until an arrangement is met? So there's less negative psychosocial impact on the electorate. You see, there's where Dr. Handel come in there now to deal with the onslaught on our psyche with what's going on. He touched on it a bit earlier on. Somebody said, Dr. Handel speak to the stress incurred by the collective since January 2020 with 52 women and 12 girls killed, COVID and all these restrictions, and now this overburdening impasse. How could that affect the people psychologically? I think I know that you addressed that in part before. Do you wish to add anything on what you said before, Dr. Handel?
Well, I could say shortly that, I mean, it's clearly affected everybody, the pandemic and this whole thing with the violence against women. And I think we'll see the fallout as time goes on. We see more depression, more anxiety. But even in the normal population, we see where our young women, like my mother, my sisters, or my nieces, they're afraid to go out on their own. They're afraid to travel. They're afraid of all these things. And so it definitely affects us as a society, and we need to do something to change it.
A number of these abuse and killings, my question as we close off, took place in the presence of children. They witnessed the death of their parent in one way or the other. Do you think years down the road, society will have to reap the results and the circumstances to what is taking place today?
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. When children face that kind of trauma, especially under the age of 10, there's a big psychological fallout with depression and personality issues that happen. And then it affects their defense mechanisms, and then affects the way they form relationships with other people. And then they can go on to be the abusers, and there's a lot of fallout. So there's no doubt that we're going to face the fallout in a few years.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, that brings us down to the end of the program. I'm seeing that it said that Shirley Cook's hand is up, but I'm not seeing it on my screen. Um, okay, I now see it. All right. All right. So let me just take Shirley Cook. Janae, you wanted to speak on a new area or something that was just said? Let me take Shirley Cook first. Shirley Cook?
Yes, good night, everyone. Great discussion tonight. I just wanted to add to what a caller said with respect to his explanation of not wanting a power sharing arrangement. I just wanted to say that most younger folks have always known under 40, persons under 40 years old in Trinidad and Tobago has pretty much known one type of politics, and that's an adversarial type of politics. They know nothing else because that is how we have structured our governance for years. And I want them to be able to look at the other side of it, that what happens now, Tobago is at an inflection point, and what happens now will determine their future and their kids' future for the next 40 years and beyond. So let us not be, a lot of young people now need to get involved and to think critically about what needs to happen now because it's going to affect them and their kids in the not too distant future. Power sharing and a coalition is a positive thing, not only for Tobago to set that standard, but for the region as a whole. So I'm urging most young people to first start thinking about the future and stop the social media adversarial and disrespect among yourselves so that you could think more clearly about how you want this country, which you're going to inherit, to be better off for you and your kids. That's
Thank
it.
you. Thank you very much. Janae, I'll give you the last word.
All right, thanks. I just wanted to get this out of the way because I kind of came here with just a little bit prepared to some extent, and I just want to reference some of the comments that were made on Facebook because I know we were speaking about adversarial politics, and I'm not going to call any names, but I just want all of us here on the panel and those that are watching online to listen to this. One person said, and this was under a recent post.
And you'll keep it brief because we are after the close off time. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. We know about you, PDP, etc. We need to know how much Tracy getting or the other ministers in the PNM. And then somebody else responded, what proof? You have a better, yeah, what proof, sorry. You better shut up with your broke self, end quote. I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we as citizens, we as the electorate, need to do better. This kind of contemptuous politics that we practice, we need to take some level of blame for it as party supporters because at the end of the day, we need to look beyond political lines and we need to see ourselves as Tobagoans because at the end of the day, we all have to live with each other and cooperate with each other at the end of the day. So I just want to admonish all of us online to raise the standard as a young person. And I heard Miss Cook mention as young people need to do better. I say sometimes those that are older sometimes need to set the example because let's be real, people mimic what they see, right? So us all as citizens need to be responsible, stop blaming each other, respect each other's views, and be diplomatic about it. That's it.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's just get as we close off. I want you to just close off in a short way. I'll take that close off, Jenny, as yours. And I want you to say what is your healing recommendation for the island and the nation at this time, given what we have been going through. Your healing recommendation in your close off speech. Yeah. Let's start with who was going to speak then?
It's Xavier here.
All right, Xavier,
I'll-
just give me yours short and sweet.
Yeah. I will just pivot from Janae, who was quoting just a brief excerpt of the overflow and avalanche of disrespectful and degrading comments that are on Facebook right now by people who are fighting against each other. This is something one of my OGs recently speak to me about. That was Rodney. When there was gang violence, and well, there still is, but when there was time to come to a truce, what you would need to see is the two leaders of the gangs shaking hands, and then the people will follow. So while the people individually, myself and others, we could do our internal work and grow for ourselves to a great degree, politics, people follow the leaders. And if they are fighting against each other, the people will eat their heads off. So I just want to co-sign that they making an approach and really being cordial with each other will significantly help, because it's damaging. That's just an excerpt of the many, many damaging comments that I have seen on social media since before January 25th.
Thank you very much. All right, so Dr. Remy.
Michael, my healing recommendation is that we can reset. It is possible. With God, all things are possible. And we should put our faith in Him and in our people and do what is necessary to carry us forward. What is happening right now is destructive and it has to change. And we can change it.
Dr. Andel, thank you very much.
The 12 commandments could be summarized or could be condensed into the first two. Love your Lord thy God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. If everyone would love their neighbor and as they would love themselves and do for their neighbor what they would do for themselves, this would be sorted out.
Thank you. Tenika?
I think all I would say is that we should abide by the word respect, and that one word has great leverage, and it would actually give greater longevity with all that we have here, regardless of whomsoever you are, based on social position, financial competence, whatever it is or you are involved in. Respect is the main key factor. And if you respect self enough, you would understand and respect everyone else, regardless of the difference in opinions and all these other things. So that is all I'm asking for with this whole healing thing. To be respectful to each other, regardless of different views and all these other things.
Thank you very much. Dr. Karen Johnson?
Yeah, less desire for power, more desire to serve the people. And because we have seen so much of the past politics, I think we need to change our perspectives if we need to change our future going forward.
Thank you very much, all. And those were the members of our panel today: Dr. Maria Dillon Remy, Xavier Edwards, Dr. Andel Roberts, Jenny Campbell, Tenika Mahabal, Dr. Kuhn Johnson. We thank you all very much for being part of it. I want to thank the technical operators who have been making sure that the Zoom and the Facebook, we could collaborate in a way for it to run smoothly. I want to thank the executive for at the Tobago Civil Net for the foresight and the vision and also the passion for the development of Tobago. Let me just tell you, if you want to contact the Tobago Civil Net, if you want to suggest discussion points, etc., you can contact them at tobagocivilnet@gmail.com, or you can call 487-9722, 487-9722. And if you want to receive a review of the program, I suspect that you could go to the Tobago Civil Net Facebook in order to be able to review it or to share it with somebody. Thank you all very much. God bless you all. And we wish you all a happy and enjoyable rest of the week. And remember, we are going to come through this one way or the other. Tobago is resilient, and we will do this successfully. God bless you all.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.